In June, the Marvel and Image universes collide. Look for Gen 13, Generation X, X-Men, Wildcats, and Bad Rock Spider-Man. Mutant Chronicles, Golgotha, a series of comics based on the popular role-playing game. And coming soon, a live-action motion picture. And tonight's final story. This month, the much-anticipated Sandman 75 arrives. Written by Neil Gaiman and drawn by Charles Best.
My name is Denny O'Neill, and I'm currently a group editor and sometime writer at DC Comics in New York City. My primary concern is Batman and his friends. I got started 30 years ago when, as a newspaper reporter on a small daily in southeastern Missouri, I wrote a series of articles about the resurgence of comic books. Comic books were just coming back at the time after having been in virtual oblivion for about 10 years. That led to Stan Lee at Marvel Comics here in New York offering me a job as an editorial assistant. It seemed like too goofy a chance to pass up, to go to New York and work in comic books, which I thought I'd do for about a year, get some stories to tell, and go back to the small paper in southeastern Missouri. Haven't quite gotten back to the paper yet. The best advice I can give a young person who wants to be either an artist or a writer in comics is to stop reading comics.
No food, no water. What comics would you like on a desert island?
If I were trapped on a desert island, the 3 comic books I'd have to have with me would be Web of Spider-Man Annual #2. That was my first exposure to Arthur Adams' work, one of my favorite artists. Justice League Quarterly #1, which is quite a funny story by Keith Giffen and great art by Chris Sprouse. And any issue of The Tick, and you can check out Saturday mornings to find out why I'd want one of those.
Stick around, because after this we've got Comicopia and Maximum Action Build Figure with Kung Fu Grip. Hey fellow comic lovers, I'm Nick in Times Square, New York, bringing you Comicopia, my weekly 150 seconds of chaos with the latest comics. This week we're kicking things off with a milestone in Flash history in issue 112. This time, we are introduced to a totally new Flash from the future, as he fights alongside XS, who's from the future, and Impulse, who's from the future. The new look is probably the coolest looking Flash ever, and Mark Waid is a superb writer. But what's with all this future stuff? Ever since that whole 0 Hour thing, it's been nothing but Flash clones coming back to our time and looking at microwaves funny. Enough already. This issue also features one of the best Flash artists ever, Anthony Castrillo, whose art is simple yet intricate. I hope they keep him on as the regular artist for a long, long time. Despite the overuse of the future past genre, I still can't ignore the screams of my inner fanboy yelling, "This is cool, man." So I must give this book 4.5 out of 5 Gs on the anti-gravity scale. Next up, an interesting little independent book called Palookaville, #8. The first thing you notice when you pick up this book is its visual kinship to a Roy Lichtenstein painting. 2 regular middle-aged Joes as they watch fireworks and deal with breaking up with their girlfriends. The writing is very relaxed and conversational, almost like Seinfeld. Although the dialogue is realistic, the plot just doesn't seem to go anywhere. And I mean, what's the deal with that? Palookaville, the comic about nothing, is at your local retailer now, and I give it 3 out of 5 Gs on the anti-gravity scale. Next up, Nix, if you don't buy this comic, you're a loser book of the week, Death, the Time of Your Life, #1. It's almost a little scary when 2 mammoths of power like Neil Gaiman and Chris Bachalo combine creative forces. Both have proven themselves to be comic geniuses, respectively, in Sandman and Generation X. Together, they have created a beautiful monster of a comic. Death, the Time of Your Life, follows a rapidly rising singer named Foxglove, who's already sick of starting. Little bummer alert, Death doesn't even make her appearance until the last panel. But man, when she does, it's worth it. And while we're on the subject, could Chris Bachalo draw children any cuter? In the end, we get a teaser that Foxglove's producer is some kind of godlike being, but we're not sure if he's from heaven or hell. Either way, it ain't good for Foxglove. Whether you're into Vertigo comics or not, this book is quite a page-turner, and I give it 4.7 Gs on the anti-gravity scale. Well, I guess that's about it for Comicopia this week. See you next time. Taxi!
Is it important to an independent comic book to have merchandise?
T-shirts are natural. Then I found a guy that did coffee mugs, so I started doing coffee mugs. I'd find different weird little things that I wanted to do. I did a sponge, I've done a patch, I did a zipper lighter with a group of people. Some of the stuff I make money on, and some of it I just hit a break-even point with. The sponges I lost money on. Worst comes to worst and I'm stuck with a bunch. I'll use them.
Alliance Multimedia is responsible for a ton of TV merchandising, like Reboot and the new Transformers. Steve Deneur is the man in charge.
I run Alliance Multimedia, which is the division that looks after Mainframe, the studio where we make Reboot, our music publishing division, and of course merchandising and licensing. We have about 80 licensing agreements, which include things like the video, puzzles, bed sheets. Here's how this business works. We own the rights to the underlying property. That includes all merchandising and licensing rights, as well as television and feature film rights. We appoint agents in different territories. So we'll have an agent in the US who is in the business of going around to different companies. He has relationships with companies that make games, toys, T-shirts. And he will go to them and present our property to them and convince them that they should buy a license from us to manufacture some product. So they pay us for the right to manufacture a product with our characters depicted on it. Books. If you're hungry, Megabyte biscuits, T-shirts, play sets, a lunchbox. It's almost impossible to go into a toy store and find a toy that doesn't relate in some way to a television show or a movie or a comic book. But more and more you're seeing people start to create things thinking that there will be some kind of merchandising and licensing opportunity. The action figures, there's Bob, there's Hexadecimal, a knapsack, running shoes. If you have a hit television series, then it will drive your merchandising and licensing product, the toy line, the games, etc., and you can make sales at retail that are far in excess of what you would have made just from making the television show. Pajamas, coloring books, and a whole load more stuff here in the box that I just can't get to.